fertilizer prices, geopolitical risks, and new tariff twists, there's plenty driving the market this week. We'll break down what needs to change, what risks matter most, and what's noise. I'm Johanna Bota, and joining us today is Josh Linville, VP of Fertilizer at StoneX. Hello, Josh.
Good morning.
So today I want to start by talking about prices because they've been a major point of concern for quite some time. What, in your view, needs to change for conditions to finally improve, and how do we get there?
That's a multi-layered question. I mean, we could probably spend a couple hours talking through all the things that are causing these high prices, what we could do to fix it. Ultimately, what it comes down to, this is specifically on nitrogen and phosphate, it's more supply. Simply put, it's supply. Over the years, we have gone from a system that had excess production capacity to we're kind of living on that razor's edge. We have enough to get by. But when these issues happen where China doesn't export until August of this year, which is a very real world scenario today, when European nitrogen production was suffering, when we've got possible war in the Middle East and we see production levels drop, which of course drops supply, we don't have that excess anymore. So you start to go through it, and really the answer to each one of these is more supply. And then where do you put that? And this is one of the things we've really been talking a lot about this winter during our presentation across the U.S. and Canada. I've been doing quite a bit. Nitrogen we talk about. This is a little bit more of a North America centric, of course, but it really does hold true around the world. How do you fix it short term? Well, remove programs like DEF that, has caused a lot of headache, a lot of heartburn for a lot of folks, a lot of money spent on repairs because of it. And that frees a lot of nitrogen up immediately, but it doesn't solve the issue. Longer term, we need to incentivize more production. Phosphate, remove these economic barriers, increase production in places that have the phosphate rock. Potash, just stop fighting with Canada, keep these economic relations together and we're okay. So these are not difficult answers, questions to answer, but they're difficult things to put in place.
Well, speaking of peace with Canada, so given how tense the U.S.-Iran situation remains, even with peace talks ongoing, how vulnerable are global nitrogen and phosphate markets right now?
It's hard to understate how vulnerable they are. Now, let's start with, we think there's a very low chance that this develops into a thing that there are long-term implications that impact supplies. And what I mean by that is we really focus in on the Strait of Hormuz. You can talk Persian Gulf and production, all this stuff. It comes down to that narrow body of water, because when you look at that body of water, you got 3 of the top 10 global urea exporters that reside in the Persian Gulf that need that strait. 3 of the top 10 anhydrous exporter depend on that strait. 1 of the top 5 phosphate exporters. Remember, the phosphate market only really has 5 major players. Saudi Arabia depends on that strait. So we can talk about, well, what happens if the U.S. strikes, oil and gas production, which would hurt nitrogen production within Iran. And they're the 3rd largest urea and the 7th largest anhydrous exporter in the world. That would hurt. Do not get me wrong. That would have a major impact. That's a very bullish situation if that starts to play out. But if Iran starts to retaliate and they start attacking boats in that strait, and these boat owners start saying, I'm not going to put my crew and I'm not going to put my vessel in harm's way, and you shut down traffic, yes, like we've said before, the world is absolutely going to focus on, well, here's what it means for oil. Here's what it means for energy, because everybody knows those markets. That's what gets your clicks. That's what gets your views on these news cycles. But it would be so ridiculously important to the nitrogen markets and the phosphate markets globally. It does not matter where you watch this from. It does not matter where you farm. It will absolutely matter. And it's going to hit every human on earth, because without fertilizer, who's growing the food?
Absolutely. And Josh, in the spirit of covering all the excitement, we have to mention the latest Trump tariff plot twist, a return to a 10% global tariff, at least 10% for now, after the Supreme Court struck down the reciprocal version from last year. Now, there's been plenty of confusion around what this means for fertilizer, but do they actually change anything?
The short answer is no. Our belief is the short answer is no. I actually had a friend of mine that hit me up this weekend. I was on my flying, sitting in the airport waiting to fly back home after conference last week. And he's like, what do you think? Well, we don't know. And after we did some more research, we started to find out some of the statements coming out of DC, some of the paperwork coming out of DC basically said fertilizer is immune, just like it was last time. So yes, there was a lot of fear. You restart the tariffs, you start from ground zero and you think, okay, it's captured everything. We're starting back from everything is covered. Well, I think the Trump administration saw this coming and they were prepared for it. And they said, listen, everything we had exempted in the last round, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the same package, just in a different form, so we get around this new hurdle that we've gotten to. So as we view it today, things can change in DC very quickly. We know that. And things are always in legal speak, right? There's a reason why lawyers get paid so much money. It's because everything is written in lawyer speak and nobody else can understand it. That as we understand it today, fertilizers are not a part of it. That is nothing that needs to influence the marketplace, nitrogen, phosphates, or potash.
Well, thank you for the clarification. And while we're on the topic of policy, there's another decision coming up that tends to spark some debate. The U.S. phosphate countervailing duties are up for their 5-year review in late March or early April. Does this matter or not?
Yes and no. And when I say yes, is obviously if we fast forward and the review is complete and they said, okay, the market structure's changed. There's no longer a need for these duties. Morocco and Russia is able to come to the U.S. without any sort of economic barrier. It is going to have an impact. There's going to be a bearish tilt to the marketplace. Everybody's going to sit back and say, I'm not going to buy nothing because these are gone. That must mean prices are going significantly lower. And we will see some of that. But there's 2 reasons why we don't believe that we're going to see prices down substantially in that case. Number one, you've still got a global S&D that is incredibly tight. You've still got China who's sitting there saying, we're not going to export again until August of this year. And like we talked about last week, or the week before, I can't remember when it was, but China's your world's largest exporter. Last year, they exported half of what they normally do. This year, they're saying, we're not going to export again until August. So they're gone for a big chunk of this year. And then number 2, you talk about the cost of production. Sulfur prices are incredibly high. Anhydrous prices are still incredibly high because of all of its own production and supply problems. Right now, we theorize if we were to drop this, let's just say NOLA DAP. If we were to drop this NOLA DAP price by, say, $50 to $100 a ton, we think we'd see more production curtailment announcements. That is how high the cost of production is. These companies are sitting on a finite amount of phosphate rock. They know it's a finite amount. And they're saying, why would I want to produce this and finish it into a product that could be used out there if I'm going to lose money? So even if we get exactly, so if we get a countervailing duty that's all of a sudden gone, it will help supplies. Do not get me wrong. There are benefits to it. I am not saying that is not the case. But to think that this is the silver bullet is where I try to caution people and said, listen, I love the optimism and I would love nothing more than be wrong and have people come back and rub it in my nose that, oh, it dropped to $300 a ton and phosphate's finally affordable. I'd be more than happy to take that criticism and have people laugh in my face. No problem. But with the global supply problems, with the production cost, we just don't think it's feasible to see anything lower given today's marketplace.
I see. Josh, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.